Cub Scouts, welcome back to another week of virtual meetings. Yay! So we're going to start this meeting like we've been starting all the other ones. So first we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. So I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And then we're going to switch to doing the oath. So Scouts, sign up all the way up. On my honor, I will do my best to do my duty to God and my country, and to obey the Scout law, to help other people at all times, to keep myself physically strong, mentally awake, and morally straight. Now for the Scout law. A Scout is trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courageous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. Hi Scouts, welcome back to another week of our virtual meetings. So this week we have the Safe and Smart, and it has 9 steps, but only 8 are required. So the first one we have memorize your address and say it to your den leader or parent, guardian, or other caring adult. So with that one, the easiest way for you to be able to memorize it is something I highly recommend is just writing it down a bunch of times. And whenever you write it down, just write it down once and then say it out loud, and then keep doing it until you remember it just from saying it. You don't have to write it down anymore, and you can just do it from memory. That's the easiest way, because if you write something down so many times, you'll just memorize it naturally. And that's something I highly recommend doing. It's the easiest way to memorize your address, because if you have to write it down, then it helps you remember it. So the second one is memorize an emergency contact phone number and say it to your parent, guardian, or den leader. So for this one, emergency contact would be probably your mom, your dad, your grandparent, or it could be a brother or sister or another relative or a family friend, a neighbor, just a number of someone that you know that will keep you safe whenever there's some type of emergency. Another number to always know is obviously 911, because that is a good one for any emergency situation that you feel the need that you need help and you need to call them. Never be afraid to call 911. Another thing is for that one is also writing it down, or you can come up with like a fun little number game with your parents to be able to memorize it and just be able to remember it and have them ask you and you can say it back to them until you can just have it memorized that way. And you can work on it over time too, like every day, like in the morning when you're eating breakfast or something, your parents can just be like, so what is my number? And then you have to tell them what the number is. Just something like that, just so you do remember it. And because remembering a number like that can really help you in emergency situations, but it can also help you whenever you're at school and let's say someone hasn't come to pick you up yet and you really need someone to come and get you, then you know that emergency number and you can call that person and be like, hey, I'm still at school. Can you please come get me? So it's not necessarily like a big emergency. It could be a little emergency, and that number will always just come in handy. So number 3 is take the 911 safety quiz. So for the 911 safety quiz, I'm just going to go over a few, but I'm also going to put a link below or on one of the sides or even above, I don't know yet, to the link so you can do the safety quiz with your parents. But I'm just going to talk about it right now and just go down the things that it asks. So the first one is, when is it okay to dial 911? A person is unconscious, your buddy has broken a bone, a fire, etc. Honestly, if you think it's an emergency, you should, if you feel like it's an emergency, something that can be justifiable, call 911. Like I said before, don't be afraid to call 911, because if you're afraid to call someone in an emergency, it can make it to where something bad can happen that wouldn't have happened if you would have just dialed the phone. So when should you not call 911? So lost toy, missing pet, angry with siblings, broken window, out of ice cream, scraped knee, etc. So those are really good examples on when you probably don't need to call 911. So if you're just upset because your sibling is picking on you or something like that, yeah, don't call 911. That's something you go to a parent for. But if you feel unsafe in your house, or you think someone's outside the window, or a stranger is trying to knock on the door, stuff like that, that can be justifiable to call 911. If you feel unsafe in the situation and you feel like you are going to be harmed, call 911. So the third one is, should you whisper on the phone? I feel that if the situation calls for it, whispering is appropriate if hiding in the closet from an intruder, for example. So yes, if you need to make let's say it's an emergency call, someone in your house is hurting you, and you just need to make the call, but you don't want them to hear you, then yes, whispering on the phone is acceptable. However, if you're trying to talk about things you know you shouldn't be talking about, that you don't want your parent to hear, you shouldn't be whispering on the phone. You shouldn't be talking about it in the first place, because you should know when the appropriate time to whisper on the phone is, not whenever you're trying to tell your buddy something that you know your parents are going to get mad at. So the next one is, should you use a clear, loud voice on the phone? So time is of essence. In most circumstances, the dispatcher needs to hear everything in the first time. So whenever you dial 911, you need to make sure you speak very clearly into the phone, and it can be very stressful and you could be under a lot of stress. You could be crying, but you want to make sure that you can be understandable through the phone, because the quicker they can get to you, the quicker they can calm you down. So you just got to think about it. You got to take a very deep breath, calm yourself, and try to find a little bit of your center to be able to make that phone call, knowing that whenever you finish that phone call to them, help will be coming and you'll be okay. So just try to keep that in the back of your mind. If you're ever in a situation where you have to dial 911, just remember that you will be okay. Someone is coming. You are all right. Everything will be okay. And you just keep telling yourself that, like kind of like in a loop. And as soon as you can get past like the first couple of seconds, just be thinking about like, oh, I'm only a second away from them getting here, and just keep thinking about that second and when they will show up. And it'll help you calm down. You won't be as agitated on the phone. So the next one is, how long should you stay on the phone with 911? So whenever you dial 911 and you call them, you want to stay on the phone with them until the first responder gets there, because you don't want something to happen where you lose the call and then they're not able to find you, or they go to the wrong address or something like that. So you don't want to make a rush call 911 and then hang up. You want to make sure that you stay on the phone with them the entire time until the first responder comes to you and helps you, because that way you're on the phone with somebody and they know that you were okay at that moment. Because if you hang up, they won't know if you're okay or not. They don't know what's going on with you, and you don't want them to you don't want anything to be miscommunicated or extra worry to happen. So just make sure to stay on the phone with them whenever you do call them. Do you know your address? So this is why the first thing we talked about is memorizing your address, because they will ask you what your address is whenever you do call 911. And that's something that you just want to have memorized so you can tell it clearly to them and they can find you quicker. So then the next thing is, can you repeat your home phone number? So like I said, that's requirement number 2. And you want to make sure that you have this number memorized of your home phone number or your parent's cell phone, or the number of the phone that you're calling them on. So if the call does get disconnected, they can call you back and they can get a hold of you quicker. So like I said, that's just the 911 safety quiz. I'm going to leave a link below so you can do it with your parents and you can talk about all your answers to everything and talk about what is the acceptable thing for you to do in situations. In a situation an emergency situation that involves fire, the most important thing for you to do if the fire ends up getting on you is to stop, drop, and roll. So I'm going to put a link down below to show this, because I don't have a way to film me stop, dropping, and rolling on the floor. However, you should really practice how to do it. And you can turn it into like a game and see who can do it fast, who can do it like the fastest and the safest, just stuff like that for you to be able to know how to stop, drop, and roll. Because in a situation, whenever you do get a little bit, if you get caught on fire or your fire just gets on you and somehow, you need to know how to stop, drop, and roll, because you want to smother out the flames, because that is the quickest way to put out a fire, is through smothering it. And that also goes into step number 5, which is you need to know how to safely roll someone else in a blanket to put out a fire. So again, with that one, I'm going to drop a link below to a video that is really good, and it will show you stop, drop, and roll and how to put someone out with a fire blanket. And those are 2 very important things that you should know just for emergency situation that has to deal with fire. So Moving on to number 6 is with your parent or guard or other caring adult, make a fire escape map out of your house and explain it to a family member or your DIT. So with this, I made a little fire escape plan out of my apartment. So one thing that's really nice about my apartment, actually has sprinklers inside of it. So if flames reach the sprinklers turn on and they'll hopefully put out the fire. There's also fire alarms in the hallways and in my apartment. So for most of y'all, if you live in an apartment complex, your apartment is very safe from a fire. So, but still, you need to know how to get out of your apartment if a fire does start, because they do happen in apartment complexes. So with mine, I live on the 3rd floor, so exiting through a window would not be a safe option for me, by no means. So what I would do is I would just leave my bedroom, which is right here. I would go through the door down here. This is through a hallway out my front door, and then I live in the middle, but I am closer to the right side of the stairs. So I would know to go out my door, go to the right, to go down those stairs to get out. And from there, I'm right next to the parking lot, so I would just go to the parking lot to get away from the burning building as quickly as possible. You don't want to worry about grabbing anything whenever you're leaving. You don't want to worry about like, oh, I need to get to my car. You just want to get away from the burning building as quickly and safely as possible. So that would be my route to be able to get out, would be that way. But like I said, I live in an apartment complex, so I have sprinklers in my apartment and there's fire alarms everywhere. However, for those of you that live in a house, you want to map out how, if you're in your bedroom that's over here, how are you going to get to the front door? You want to find like the safest routes to get out. And you can just, I mapped this on, this is the packets that we have for our Cub Scouts, and this was an activity that they had to do. But you can just use regular graphing paper, or you can just write it down on just any kind of piece of paper. And if you want to, you can just keep it on like your refrigerator. So you just know the safest route to be able to get out of your house. It's always something nice to have, just to be able to remind you. If an emergency situation does happen, you already know the way you're going to go to get out. So that brings us to number 7. And with a parent, guardian, or other caring adult, try to practice fire drills at home. So we all have to do this at school. Whenever you always practice the fire drill, because you want to know what to do in an emergency situation. And that's something that's really important, because if you don't think about how you're going to react to the emergency situation, whenever the emergency situation happens, you're going to be very overwhelmed by what is just going on. So you want to be prepared, because the best thing is the best case scenario, you want to already have that mapped out for what could possibly happen. So for that, like I said, you just want to go back to the step before. You want to have it mapped out and then practice it with your family. So you're prepared for a situation that could happen like this, because they happen every day, and you want to be prepared for this. So that brings us into step 8. Find the smoke detector in your house. With the help of your parent or other caring adult, check the batteries. So whenever whenever smoke detectors are getting low, they let you know. They make that very, very irritating, high-pitched beeping noise, and it goes off every few seconds. So that is when you know that you need to change the batteries in your smoke detector. However, you still want to make sure that at least once a year you go through and change all your batteries, just because they might not tell you if they're low, they might not beep at you. And you want to make sure that your smoke detectors are always have good batteries in them, because you don't want those to be out, because that is one way in a house, or even in my apartment, if the alarms don't go off in the hallway, then the smoke detector will go off whenever there's a bunch of smoke, and it just alerts you to there is an emergency happening, and you got to be prepared. And that's when it comes back to having your plan to get out of the house if that happens. Because even if the smoke detectors go off and you don't see a fire, you still want to get out of the house. Because even if you don't know where the fire is, you still want to exit the house. You don't want to try to find the fire. Just leave the building, call 911. But you want to make sure you leave the building first. So that brings us into number 9, which during this time with the pandemic, this one is going to be a little hard to do. However, it is a great experience. And if you do this one, I'll just read it to you so I can get into it more. So visit an emergency responder station, or have an emergency responder visit you. So with this, you can go to any fire station really, and you can just ask them to see the truck or see the inside, and they will let you. They're all very, very nice. Usually fire stations have firefighters on duty, or they'll have volunteers there, and they'll all work with you, and they will love to tell you about all of it. They'll even take you into the ambulance that they have. They'll do it all. And you just have to, they're really nice, and you can just ask them, or you can call your local fire department. You can even call the local police station. You could probably have a police officer come to your house just so they can talk to you about it. They love doing stuff like that. You just got to reach out and talk to them. But yeah, that concludes our video for this week. So next week we have another one coming, and we have more after that planned. I hope everyone is staying safe at home. Remember, make your fire safety escape plan. Take the 911 fire safety quiz so you know how to properly call 911. You know when to use 911. And just stay safe and healthy. Bye, guys. I'll see you next week.